Hello, thanks for listening to the Finance Leadership Podcast, the latest update and news about the Finance Leadership Programme. As usual, you listen to myself, Kevin Gormley, and today I am joined by Colin Ward, who's been on the podcast before. And just to remind everyone, Colin works as part of our FLP assessment team. So welcome again, Colin. Thanks for joining the podcast today.
Hello, Kevin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to talk about some impending changes to do with how we assess our students on the Finance Leadership Programme. So for anyone who currently is a student or is pending starting studying or considering the platform as a pathway to CGMA, we have topic level assessments which are embedded within the platform, which form one of the assessment methodologies that we use for students. So Colin, as I said, works in our assessment. So Colin, maybe if you just remind listeners of what you do as part of the team.
Sure. So again, my name is Colin Ward. I work for CGMA's Education and Exams department. I'm an associate director. I'm primarily responsible for the FLP's assessment, the design of the assessment, the development of the assessment, and also the learning design within the platform too.
As I mentioned, there's impending changes, and we're here to discuss these with Colin today. So what we're going to do is walk through what those changes are, the rationale behind them, develop some more detail around what is actually changing, when it's going to happen, and the impact to our students. So maybe as a student, you're currently midway through a competency or midway through a level. Worth listening to this because it will help you understand what we're ruling out later in this year. Colin, I suppose the first thing is, we've mentioned there's changes, so could you give us a brief overview of what those are, please?
Sure. So to talk very briefly about them, we have what we call assessments of proficiency. They're the topic level assessments. Those are the assessments which in essence make a judgment on the learning that you've completed so far, whether you're proficient at each topic and the content of that topic. So the changes affect that or those assessments directly and specifically. So there are four main measures that we're introducing. So the first one is to restrict the number of attempts that you can make at successfully completing a TLA in a 12-hour period. So again, when we talk about attempts here, we're not talking about individual questions, but your attempt to actually, or your effort to successfully complete each topic. So we're restricting the number of attempts that you can make in a given period. So that's measure number one. The next one is to restrict the actual time that you have for each attempt. And again, that's to successfully complete each topic. And the third is to introduce a new user conduct policy for the FLP and for its learners. And then the last one is, and students may be familiar that they get a little bit of feedback currently with each individual TLA that they take. They don't get told whether their response was right or wrong, but they might get a hint or things like that. And we're removing that feedback from individual TLAs. So those are the four measures that we're introducing.
Right. So Colin, just being devil's advocate, as I do quite often.
Sure.
Everything's fine as it is. Way we making these changes will be a message or an automatic response that's going to come from students, because I've been on the platform for maybe a year, for example, completed operational level, now you're moving into management. So why are you changing this for me? What's the rationale behind this?
So it's a really good question and a really fair question for yourself or for any of our learners to ask. Why change anything and why introduce something that restricts user access? It's not something that we do lightly, and we're doing it for a few reasons. Maybe not the main reason, but one of the main reasons at least is we're very conscious for ourselves about what we think of the Finance Leadership Programme, how good it is, how well it equips students with the necessary technical knowledge and skills to progress through and take the case study exam and succeed in the CGMA case study exams. Like with any educational programme, integrity and confidence are really key features of it. We don't see these, but we want to know that they exist, and we either want to feel them as ourselves in terms of AICPA and CGMA, want to know that our platform has integrity, but it's also important too for the students themselves to know that the platform has integrity, that it's a robust system, that it's treating people fairly. Our members are CIMA members, and we hope that all of our FLP learners go on to become CIMA members. They too want to know that the platform, that the people that we're in essence helping to become CIMA members are going through a valid and robust education program and platform. So the measures that we're doing collectively will hopefully build some more of the integrity. We think we have a robust and valid platform as it is, but it's just to give ourselves and all of our members and other stakeholders additional assurance that our students are working through the platform fairly, that the platform itself is robust, and that the program can give that confidence to those going through it, those who have been through it, and other members, that this is a valid educational program. There's one other reason too that we want to introduce this. Obviously, at the moment, the topic level assessments, the TLAs, there are no restrictions on it. And we sometimes have found that students in a scenario where they can take the TLAs as often as they want, whenever they want, maybe don't quite engage with them in the way that we want. They are assessments of proficiency. You do need to successfully complete them to demonstrate that you are proficient at each topic level. And again, maybe sometimes students feel that, not that they're unimportant, but that maybe, well, I can just take it again and there's no great problem. Introducing some measures will hopefully, we think, get students to focus a little bit more on the importance of these topics and their assessments in their own right. And so we're not limiting the number of overall attempts that you have. And I think, we can talk through the details of each of them in due course. But in essence, we hope that students will engage more forcefully or in a more focused way with the assessments through these measures as well.
I suppose to summarise that, Colin, it's a behavioural change. So we're trying to change or improve the behaviours of some of our students so they become more engaged and focused the first time maybe they sit a TLA. Would that be fair to say?
I think that's fair. I think in terms of, now, to be very clear, students, particularly those who are already working through the FLP, will know that they're not going to successfully complete each topic on a first go. And the data that we have shows that students often require, certainly for more of the complex topics, will require multiple attempts to successfully complete. And that's absolutely fine. We say this kind of when we're talking to students and any of our guidance to students directly. There's no judgment on needing multiple attempts to take the TLAs. Some of them are inherently, we don't make them more complex than they need to be, but some topics, and students will know this, are just tricky. And we understand that they will need multiple goes at it. So we're not trying to make it that more complex, but we do understand too that for those topics where maybe students might not engage fully with it, once you kind of hit that point in your journey for each topic where you need to take the assessment, you do need to maybe take some time out, focus, find a little space for yourself if you can to concentrate and to work through it. And that the restricting some of that for some students we hope will be a benefit, in that it will allow them to kind of go, okay, I'm going to move on to another topic rather than get bogged down here, or I'm going to go back and engage in a more focused way with the learning content a second time before I make another attempt at it.
So Colin, there's a number of changes that we're bringing in, and I think it'd be useful if you could maybe just step through each one, give a bit more flesh on actually what's happening. For example, the number of attempts you can have on a TLA, how long you'll have to answer a TLA, when do you sign up for the code of conduct, and does that have any impact on progression, for example? So just to give people a bit more insight into what's coming down the tracks.
Sure. To start with the first measure. So what we're doing is we are restricting the number of attempts that an individual learner can take on an individual topic in a 12-hour period. And people might ask, why 12 hours? Well, we understand that for our learners, the great positive of the FLP, one of many positives, is that it is open and flexible. Students can go in and out as they please. They can learn when they're available to learn. Could be lunchtime, during work, or in the evenings. And so we understand that, and we don't want to disrupt that unduly. But we do, as I kind of mentioned, there are benefits in ensuring that the system is robust and has integrity. And so the 12-hour limit, in essence, in any 12-hour period that you give, you can only have a maximum of 3 attempts. So if you take multiple attempts, say 3 attempts in starting from, say, 3 p.m. today, local time, wherever that is for you, that will be something that it will block out any further attempts for the rest of that 12-hour period. So in essence, it's a way of giving a kind of a timeout for students so that they don't get bogged down in individual topics. Now, when we apply that restriction, it only applies to that individual topic. A student is not blocked out of the FLP. They can go on to other topics and take the assessments for those, and they can do that across any topic at that level. So the restriction only applies to that individual topic that they've unsuccessfully attempted 3 times. There will be a timer on the screen when they go back into the topic to tell them how long their lockout period is remaining for. So for example, if you got locked out at a given time, you might be locked out for a number of hours. Now, it's a rolling 12-hour period. So in essence, if you've taken a multiple attempts over the previous 12-hour period, it may show that you have 1 attempt in the next hour. And if you don't successfully complete that, you'd be locked out again. But in essence, it's just a way to try and ensure that students engage fully with the learning and don't get frustrated or bogged down in a particular topic. So that's the first one. The second one then is to have a time limit on the individual attempts that you make. And again, an attempt is not the individual questions, but your effort to successfully complete that topic with that assessment. So that will be a period of time that will be set out. You will know, it will say on screen what the period of time is for that individual topic. And there will be a clock in the corner as you undertake your attempt, which will count down as you're working through it. Now, in terms of setting the time, again, we've tried to be as fair as possible to students so that they have sufficient time, a reasonable and fair amount of time to successfully complete the questions for that topic. So for most topics, there will be a minimum amount of time, still figuring that out a little bit, but it will be displayed on screen. But for certain topics, we've already identified these. We know, for example, that some topics that might have a lot of calculations in them. And unlike other CGMA assessments, if you're doing the TLAs for this individual topic, it might be that there are multiple calculations all in this one area. And they typically take longer than standard questions, which might be more narrative in design. So for calculations or for others that we've deemed to be more complex, additional time will be available. We've ensured that the time available for each topic is reasonable, is specific to that topic and the needs of that topic, and is fair for the student. So that's the second measure. And then the third measure, as you mentioned, is the user conduct policy. And so really what this is I think something that we've needed for a while within the FLP, but it's a positive thing. And in essence, it's a code of conduct for students and how they behave and their behaviors within the platform, how they engage with the learning content and with the assessment. And in terms of assessment too, not just what we call our assessments of proficiency, the TLAs, but also and to use the technical term, the kind of the formative assessment that we use. So students will be familiar, depending on where they are on the platform, that we have things like knowledge checks, or we have the business simulation assignments. So those are assessments which you don't have to pass, they're not graded, but they are there as part of the learning experience. They give you feedback and they're there to help you learn or to help you understand your own progression or your own understanding of the topic content. But this user conduct policy covers everything. It also covers your behavior with other learners as you might engage them with, AICP and CGMA staff and so forth. And it's really, again, setting out some of the kind of ideal behaviors and conduct. The result on this sounds very serious or very draconian, and it's not meant to be at all, but it is tying some of the behaviors that we would hope our students would never, demonstrate in the FLP, but it is tying it to some of the existing processes that exist across CIMA and also the American Institute of CPAs to some of their conduct policies and procedures, and potentially even sanctions if somebody demonstrates a really negative behavior within the FLP. Again, why are we doing this? Well, we think it's important for students to understand that going through this platform, they are in essence working towards becoming CGMAs, and that there is a responsibility and an integrity required for that designation. It means something to be a CGMA. It means something for our existing members, the CIMA and CBA, to be a CGMA. And so there are expected behaviors for that. So really the conduct policy is setting that out. And it's something that students will abide by each time they attempt a TLA for a given topic. You will see and be reminded that you're abiding by these principles, this conduct policy. So that's the third measure. And then the fourth measure is kind of relatively small, but might have a little bit of an impact on students. So when you're taking individual TLAs, you might see a little red mark to say, oh, that response wasn't correct. And sometimes there's a little bit of feedback, which wasn't designed to give you the right answer, but maybe just explain why your response wasn't correct or maybe what you hadn't thought of. So again, because we want to reinforce the idea that these are measures of proficiency, or assessments of proficiency, I should say, and ensure that you engage with them correctly. And for us to have confidence in your, as a student's proficiency, and for you and for others to have confidence in that proficiency too, we're removing that feedback. So again, you won't see any feedback on an individual question. You will just provide an answer, click submit, and you will move on to the next question. Obviously, you'll still be told whether you've successfully completed the topic or not, but there won't be any other feedback. And if you haven't successfully completed, that's okay. It's a perfectly normal part of the process. You'll have to go back and attempt those TLAs again. So those are the four measures that we're introducing.
Okay, and when are we planning to roll this out?
We're looking to introduce these changes basically in the last week of August. At the moment, the change is still in development. We're pretty confident that'll be last week in August. We are conscious too that particularly for introducing measures like this, that we don't want this to be any more disruptive to students than it need be. It is a change in how you engage with the assessment, but also we're conscious too that there are given periods throughout the year that our FLP learners are preparing for case study exams. And while we obviously hope that they prepare well in advance for them and ensure that they complete all areas of a given level before they are scheduled onto the case study exam and to allow time for preparing for the case study exam, we do know that there can be some pressures as that time frame comes up. So we operate in terms of introducing certain measures throughout the year at given points where they're likely to cause least disruption to students in terms of their case study preparation. And the next available period for that is at the end of August. So we're aiming very much for that date, and that's when we intend to launch. In terms of how we might communicate that, once we're 100% confident that the end of August is our time for launch, roughly 6 weeks in advance of that, maybe even a little earlier, we'll start our communication process. So we're going to begin talking to students at that point.
We will tell students, we will tell employers, we'll tell stakeholders. Are we sending out messages to everyone at the same time?
Pretty much. The message will be slightly different for different people. For students, primarily, the message is much more important. So we'll be putting out lots of videos to show you what the new screens look like, where you'll see the information. So, for example, where it will say you're about to take the TLAs for this topic, where you'll see the time that's available for that individual topic, the details about the user conduct policy and how you might access and read that if you choose. Also then within the TLAs themselves, where you see the clock, how the timer works down, that sort of thing. So lots and lots of material, FAQs explaining again, as I've sort of done here or hope to do here, in terms of what we're doing, why we're doing it, when it's happening, how it might impact you as a student. But also we're conscious too, we spoke about how we're looking to enhance the integrity of the program overall. And we think that this is just another feature. Again, we've always been confident in our program, but this just provides extra assurance for lots of different people who have an interest or a stake in the FLP and the CGMA designation. So we'll be communicating that to say what we do. And as I say, that will start roughly 6 weeks in advance with some reminders in the interim period between the initial communication and launch. And again, we're hopeful that there'll be maybe too much information for people, really, but we want to make sure that people understand what's happening, are familiar with all of the measures, and are familiar with how it will affect their experience of the platform.
Yeah, I think an overriding message here for anyone who is engaged in the platform is really here, we're not introducing anything that's totally out of the ordinary for similar products or, assessment platforms that they may have used in the past. These things are all pretty standard in terms of their intent and how they help and shape the platform. And even the code of conduct, again, all of us use digital platforms, and I can count on one finger how many times I've read the T's and C's. I'm not saying or suggest that you do that. I think you should be aware of what you sign up to. But every exam you've sat in your life on a digital platform, you agree to a set of criteria that's reasonable. So yeah, these are all things I think that further enhance as you say, the integrity and the purpose of the platform. So I think these will be received pretty well by most stakeholders.
I think that's right, Ken. I think one of the things, just to talk about user conduct policy, we're all familiar with terms and conditions, and we know that sometimes when we click on that button, we don't always do it, and they run into hundreds of pages, and there's usually stuff buried in there that maybe we don't like. User conduct policy is very much for our learners, and it's directed at them. We're not doing anything that's trying to, in essence, pull the wool over anyone's eyes. It's actually a relatively short document. It's about 7 or 8 pages, which is a lot if you want to read that sort of thing. But mostly, again, it's talking about the behaviors that we expect from you as a learner, and also some of our obligations as an education provider to our learners. And just setting out that this is an education program. Yes, it's online. Yes, it's self-directed. Yes, you may not have a huge amount of engagement with others, but in that engagement, in the engagement with our learning content, with our assessment, there are some expectations about how you do it. And again, those expectations don't really come from us as an organization. They come from our members. They come from society, from employers who expect anybody with the CGMA designation or is working towards that to display or demonstrate positive learning behaviors in any environment. And so really it's just about enforcing that. So I would hope that anybody who does engage with this, who might be interested, would look at it and kind of understand what it is that we might expect of them. So there should be no horrors hidden in there. It's really just about expectations and behaviors, positive behaviors, as much as anything else.
Okay, that's great, Colin. Hopefully this will be useful for our students and stakeholders to understand what's coming. But as Colin has said, more information will be sent out about 6 weeks before the implementation. So everyone's very clear and has much more detail. Thanks, Colin, for taking the time today.
Thanks, Kevin.
There'll be more information coming, but we will have some show notes here on some of the information when released, which will direct you to maybe other websites or documents or information pertaining to these changes. There'll be more to explore on the show notes. To view them, just click on the episode's info icon on the podcast app or your smartphone or tablet, or open the episode in the web browser. For more information, you can go to our websites either at aicpa-cema.com. We also have an FLP-specific website called enroll.cgma.org. Both provide different information, all take you to the same registration process, but they're presented differently. Thanks again for listening today. If you find a colleague that could use this information, feel free to share it in your networks. The share button is on the podcast app. That's it for now. Thanks for your time. Goodbye.
This content is designed to provide illustrative information with respect to the subject matter covered and does not represent an official opinion or position of the AICPA, the Association, or CIMA. It is provided with the understanding that they are not engaged in offering legal, accounting, or other professional services. If such advice or expert assistance is required, the services of a competent professional person should be sought. The AICPA, the Association, and CIMA make no representations, warranties, or guarantees as to, and assume no responsibility for, the content or application of the material contained herein, and especially disclaim all liability for any damages arising out of the use of, reference to, or reliance on such material.